Greetings hobbyists, this is Artisans of Vol, and in this video we're going to be looking at creating the most efficient workflow possible for creating these computer workstations. So this was born out of a conversation with some patrons where we were talking about things we just didn't use enough, and efficient workflows kind of came up, and we were talking about using the asset browser and what we can do with that. And I'm going to start with the asset browser, but only to bring in a scale reference, and I've got my Space Marine Bob over here. So we've brought him in there, and we're just using this for a scale reference, and we're going to create a workflow for a terminal, which we're going to make as efficient as possible. Now when I say efficiency here, what I don't mean is doing this as quickly as possible, though on the long term this is going to be as quick as we could make it, but we're doing this for long term gains, so it's going to take us a bit longer to begin with, but then it's going to make us have loads more options further down the line for creating multiples of this. And that's really important with terrain. You don't want loads of the same things on a board, it looks really boring. So we're just going to scale up this cube, and I'm going way bigger than it needs to be, and I'm just going to G that up so we're approximately in the same place as the bottom of our base. Now, first thing to consider here, bearing in mind this is for 3D printing and it is for using with a miniature game, is that miniatures have a base on them. So how tall do I need this computer workstation to be? Because there are going to be models like this next to it on bases, so actually I need to consider that when doing the height, and this is going to be a little out of scale, because realistically a character should be that tall if we use the red line as the floor, but because of the bases they're always going to be there, so we need to make it taller to make it make sense. So I'm just going to cut out the basic shape that I want for this workstation. So I'm going to use box cutter for this. Now, there's going to be some add-ons in this that are basically a requirement for this workflow. In fact, there's only one that's really a requirement and one that's there for style and options at the end. But I will use other add-ons throughout this. I'll name them as we go, and I'll point out why they're not really required, but they do speed things up. And in this instance, it's just going to be faster than creating these cuts and booleans from scratch. So what we'll do is we'll just start here. No, what we will do is D and change that to an N-gon cutter. And we're just going to do something like that to begin with. Maybe there, no there. I think that's going to be good. And let's just cut there. Then I want the back of this workstation. Let's go with something like that thickness. And we want something a bit less of an angle. So we're going there. Now, I'm doing these at an angle because if I 3D print this, I want to be able to know that I can 3D print this on the base, and that's going to work because we don't have anything parallel to the build surface. Then we need, what? Let's say this to be maybe there. Let's go with there, there, and then there for the top part of our workstation. And this looks definitely too wide, so let's cut that off something like that. Okay, maybe actually a bit lower. So hard ops here, Q, ever scroll, and let's just G and Z that down. And then I'm going to do that again. And I think I actually want this further down. Somewhere like there. And then same thing with this bit there, G and Z. So this is what's nice about this non-destructive workflow. We can just fiddle around as we want, and maybe actually something like that. And I think that will look good there next to our miniature. You can still see over it just about, and this is probably about the right size. Maybe this bit at the top's too thick. Let's Q, ever scroll, and G, and then X that across. Something about there. Anyway, H. To hide that. Now this is going to be too wide as well, so let's just S and then Y to bring that in a little bit. Something about there I think would look right. And yeah, this would look good, I think. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply this, but first of all I'm going to Shift and D to duplicate it, and then I'm going to hide that duplicate. We'll call this terminal mods, because the modifiers are still there, and then let's H to hide that, and for this one I'm going to use hard ops, so I'm going to Q and then Q because I've got smart apply to my quick favorites, and then hit enter, and then that's all done. Then I'm going to go into face mode, select that face, and X and delete those faces. We'll talk about why we're doing that later, but just for a brief comment on it, it's so we can array it and it's not going to cause internal geometry. W to get out of box cutter, and so far we could have done all of this without add-ons, but it just made life a little bit quicker. Now, this is the bit where we're going to set up the important parts of this, and what I'm going to do is go into face mode. Oh no, first of all I'm going to apply the scale with Control and A and scale, and we're going to have a look at the faces of the objects or the parts where we might want to put some interesting surfaces on it. Now, we're not going to do this for everything because it would take forever, and I don't want this a video that just shows you something that's repetitive and boring, but we're going to go there. I could do one under here. Let's leave that, but I will do one at the back there. And then I'm going to I, and then I again, so we're individually insetting those, and let's go to about there, I think will do. Now, what's going to be important here is we're going to be using an add-on in a bit that's going to allow us to replace this face, or this face with other objects. And this is the whole point of this. We're going to create a series of things to replace this, and then we can just bring them in as much as we want. So we can create loads and loads of variations. And we're actually going to do this in a slightly nested way, where one will go into another, which will go into another, so we have even more options. You'll see what I mean as I go through this. I don't think there's an easy way to explain that without showing it, but nesting is sort of what this is. So what I'm going to do is go into face mode. I'm going to select these faces here, and I'm going to shift and D to duplicate those, and then let's just G, and then, I don't know, bring them off here, and we'll bring that one, G, and then X to the back, so it's near the back. Now, this one is perfectly vertical, which is fine. We can do things with that easily, but these two are an annoying angle. In fact, I'm going to hide Bob, our Space Marine, for now, and that's not the greatest for putting detailing on this, so we want to actually flatten these out. So to do that, first of all, let's separate this all out. Let's P, separate by loose parts, and now we've got these all separated, there, and there. I think we're going to put these into different collections so that they're easier to find and hide. So let's rename this one. We'll call this upper face, or actually upper terminal face. Just to be clear, this one will F2 and call lower terminal face. And this one we'll call F2 and back terminal face. So it's really easy, and we'll create collections for each of these, I think. No, for now, we're just going to M, let's select all of those, M, and then we'll put those in a new collection, and we'll just call these faces. Create that, and then they're in our faces. So, either way, we need to straighten these out or flatten these out. Oh yeah, we can't see that when we're at an angle. So, these need to be flat, just to make things quicker. There are other ways around this, but we could do. But flattening it out is probably the easiest way to do this. Item, yeah, everything's fine. Now, we want to rotate these round, basically, but that's going to be a little bit annoying. I don't know exactly what this angle is. Well, I do, because box cutter locks to certain angles, but I want to make this so you're not reliant on box cutter. And we could do things fiddling around with everything, but I'm actually going to use another add-on for this, and it's called Flowify. Now, it's not really used for this purpose. This is a bit of a bastardization of what it's meant to do, but this is great, because what I can do is go to Flowify and click Create Source Grid from Target Surface, and this is exactly the same size as this, but it is not at an angle. It's been straightened out, which is awesome. We're going to do the same thing for this. Flowify, Create Source Grid from Target Surface. So we've got each of these, so that one there and that one there, and then we can delete out these, we don't need them anymore. Now I'm just going to demonstrate this process. Let's just G this over here, so we've got that one to the side. In fact, let's Alt and A to use machine tools and align, just so they're at the same height for anything we want to put on both of these, like computer screens and stuff. And then we're going to talk through what we're going to do here. So first of all, I want several options. I don't want this to just be the surface that goes into this space. I want to have a range of surfaces. So I'm just going to Shift and D, and then Y, and then Shift and D again. And we're going to bring that across, and we're going to create several options. So with that in mind, let's select all of these, go into face mode, select all of them, and we'll just I to inset these a little bit, just so that we know that they're all working in the same space. Then for this one, I'm actually going to select this edge here and this edge here, Control and E, and subdivide. So now we've got this panel divided into two. Now thinking about it, actually, let's just delete this one, and let's Shift and D, and then Y, and then Shift and R to repeat that. For this one then, we'll go into edge mode, and I'm going to select this face, face mode even, I this to inset it the tiniest amount, such a small amount that it's not going to be a problem for us. We'll explain why in a bit, and why this is important. And then in edge mode, we're going to select there, Control and E, and then subdivide that. And then for this one, Alt and Q to go into that, select those, Alt and E, and then subdivide those. So what we're going to be able to do with this is effectively put anything in one of these squares, or here, and then same thing here, or we've got our smaller squares, and we can put them in there. And this is what I mean by nesting. We're going to create things to go into this space, and then this whole object will get transposed into this space. So this is going to create loads and loads of options really quickly. We just need to make the cells, I guess, or the other bits to nest into here. So we're going to create some different work terminals that fit into each of these shapes. So we'll start with this one, and I'm only going to do one for this, but it's going to be a base for the rest of them. So we're just going to come here, Shift A, Mesh. In fact, let's just Shift and S and bring our cursor to the selected, Shift and A, Mesh, and then we're going to bring in a cube. I'm going to start with like a work screen. So let's go somewhere there, S, and then X somewhere there maybe, G, and then X, that sits up here, and then G, and then Z that down a bit. Control and A to apply the scale, and we're just going to make something that looks a bit like a glass computer screen. Shift and G, select similar by length. Control and B, bevel that around nicely. Let's go up to 16 so it's nice and smooth, and then click there, Control and B, and we'll do the same thing there. So that should work for a glass surface. Now you'll notice I don't care about going beneath this. We'll talk about why in a second and how this add-on that we're going to use works. So we'll stick with that for now. In fact, actually, let's just G and Z that up a little bit. Go into face mode, Alt-click there, Alt and E, and extrude faces along normals. We could have used hard ops for that, but we'll just stick with that for now. Let's G and Z that down, and I think that'll do well for our computer screen. Then I want some buttons for this. So let's Shift and A again, Mesh, bring in a cube. We know that's about 2 millimeters. It's probably wider than I want it to be. We'll go with about 0.8. Generally should work. G and then X that down. And then so I've got this relatively central. I'm going to use a geometry node setup that I made a while ago that allows me to array this from a centered point. You'll see what I mean in a second, but before we do that, let's select those edges, Control and B, and put in a bevel, just so it looks a bit more like a keyboard button. And let's, I don't know, let's deal with some of these up here. So let's Shift and D, we're going to put one here, let's Q, and we're going to use the hard ops version of array, just because it's a bit quicker. Let's go here, and then that's probably alright as a gap. We'll make this perfect in a second. Then I'm just going to A again, and then we'll go to there. There, that looks about right. So let's get these approximately the same. Then I'm going to press Tab, and here we've got our arrays. So let's go to -1.1, which looks fine. And then I can hit W, and that brings me to the other array. You can see this all over here. So we go between arrays, and we'll call that -1.1 as well, so we know that those are perfectly spaced. Click, and then we've got that good to go, and that will probably be fine on height. Maybe a little bit less. No, I think if we want this to be 3D printed, we want it to be fairly obvious. Let's bring that up a bit. So we've got that good to go, and we'll have some more buttons, Shift and D, and then Y, bring them over here, and then let's S to scale these up a bit. Let's not go too big, maybe something like that. And then we'll just come to our modifier here, and we're just going to down that array. So that's going to be 2, and we'll bring that down further. So something like that. So some different looking buttons so that they're not all the same. Yeah, that looks good. And then here we'll make our keyboard. This is where we're going to use our centered array because we want to center this on other objects. So add modifier. I've got this as a geo modifier. It's called a centered array. And we're going to do this on the y-axis, and you can see exactly what this does. Let's bring that down to here somewhere, and then let's up that. So this is going to be our centered array, something like that. Now, if you want to know how I made that, there's a link in the description to this. It's actually a pretty easy geometry node setup, so even if you haven't used geometry nodes before, this is perfectly usable, so don't be afraid of it. And I'll chuck this up on the Patreon again. It has been there before, but if you want to get these videos a week ahead of time, ad-free, and help support the channel, you can do that for a few dollars a month. And as I say, I'll put the file for this geometry node set up there as well, so you can just download it and use it. I also put all my models that I design up there if that's something you're interested in. Then we're going to need a new array, so Q array, we're going to put that array there, but we are going to add a Y component as well. So let's click Control and X, and we'll get that to approximately halfway. We could be more precise with this. In fact, let's go back to there. I think that needs to be a bit closer. There we go. So you can do this with your normal array modifier as well, but it's just something that I find quick and easy to do there. Q, control click to get a new array, and then X, and we want more of these, so that's going to be our keyboard. I think that's going to be enough. In fact, we might put an extra one in. Let's G and X that up. No, that's going to look a little bit tight. Let's get that down to 2, and I think we're happy with our keyboard here. So what I'm going to do is select all of these, Shift and D, so that we've got those ready to go when we need them. And what I'm going to do is M and move that to a new collection. We're going to call that keys. Create that, and then there are our base meshes for those. We might even want to make them assets in our asset browser, so that if we've got any other terrain, we know they're all the same size and similar layout. Then for this one, QQ, apply it, and I'm going to get rid of some of these. L there, and then L there, I think. Delete those out. No, maybe we're going to do that one, that one, that one, and that one as well, and have this sort of moving in. Then we're going to get rid of, let's actually select there, G, B, and then we're going to go in the Y direction all the way to here, and then let's L that, that one, that one, that one, that one, and our last one, delete those vertices, and we've got a kind of like space key. I know this isn't what a keyboard looks like perfectly, but you get the idea. So that's us pretty happy with this. So what we're going to do is a similar idea. We're going to create a load of faces over here to do this with. So we need a bigger face. Let's select here and here, go into face mode, select this face, Shift and D, and then X, bring those down here, and then P, separate by loose parts. So we've got these two as separate things. We've got our origins in weird places, so let's Shift and S and origin to our geometry. So they're in the middle, and then we can start making, again, another range of faces to be placed onto these. Shift and D, and then X, and then we can Shift and R, make a load of those, and then Shift and D, X, and then Shift and R to make a load of those. Now with this done, we've got one final thing to do, and we're going to demonstrate it over here first. So what I want to do is go into face mode, A, E to extrude this down. That's going to mess with our normals. You can see this shading doesn't look right. If we come here and click face orientation, you can see that this is yellow for me to show faces. They've actually changed this in Blender to make it work in a much nicer way recently, so this will just show up red for you. So I'm just going to A, Shift and N to sort that out. But we do have a problem in that we don't want this moving through our geometry. Oh, I do want to make a copy of this. Let's F2 and call this screen. And then M, and we'll move that to a new collection called screens. Right, okay, so what we need to do is get rid of all these bits that are going underneath these surfaces, and that's why we're making this into a solid shape. It doesn't matter for what we're going to do later. We're only interested in the fact that there's a face here, and that's still there. So all I'm going to do is click, 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 click there, Control, Shift, and plus. That's with Ball Tool, which is free, and it does it without adding in a modifier, because we don't want this as a modifier. We need it done destructively. So we've got that there ready to go. Now what I'm going to need to do is do the same thing with all of these. Face mode, let's just select all of these, and then let's E to extrude those down in the Z axis, and then once again A, Shift and N to make sure they're the right way around, and we're good to go. So I have actually already recorded this video before. I'm a little bit sick at the moment. In fact, I'm quite a lot a bit sick. And that means I have got very little sleep over the last week, which has ended up with me recording this video with my microphone turned off, which was a really smooth move. Now, it basically got to this point, and then I've been demonstrating everything that I've been creating, And what I'm going to do is just show this sped up, because it was a bit boring and repetitive anyway. You get the idea. We've done it once. We're just going to do this with making different screens and different sections here, and I'll just show this sped up. I'll chuck on a little bit of music so you can watch this if you want to, but importantly, if you have a look in the description or if you're on YouTube, this will be in chapters, so you can just skip this whole bit if you want to. No problem with that. I just wanted to leave it in case people were interested in the process. So at this point we've got 6 of our medium-sized objects, and we've got a load of our smaller ones, and I've just realised these haven't been boolean together. So let's just boolean these together, again for the same reason we did with the one over here, because we want to get rid of the excess geometry that would cause a problem. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use these to create our range of objects or faces that will go onto the computer console. And this is just such a really efficient way of doing this. These ones we're going to subtract, so Control Shift and minus, so that we've got some sort of viewing points here. And this is as quick as it is to do. It's that quick and easy. And we're going to make a few examples of this. Let's just G and then Y these across. And what we're going to do is make a range of these onto these surfaces. And then from here, place it onto our computer console. Now, we're just going to deal with the face that's here, but we could do this for loads of ones at the top, because we've obviously got here a face there as well. And if we wanted to, we could do them on some of the back objects as well. So this is going to make almost like infinite variations once we've got these put onto a range of faces here. So let's Shift D and then X, and then let's Shift and R and do that. I don't know. We'll make that many. I mean, this is still going to give us, in very little time, a huge range of objects, and we could even do more. In fact, let's just Shift R one time more, and we'll leave these as they originally would be, just so we can create more if we want to. Now, the one limit of this add-on that we're going to use is that everything needs to be one object. So we'll come here, press Ctrl and J, and join these all together. We're going to go into face mode, and actually what I've done here, I forgot to do this, is that these faces have been raised up. So actually, let's just L, and select all of those, and delete those, and we'll do the same thing for here. So we want this one and this one, this one, this one, this one, but also this small little face in between. Let's not forget that's there. We've got these faces around the outside. I did say I'd explain why they're here, and that will happen in a second, and those, and we're just going to come here, and then we want the same thing. So E, and then I'm just going to Control click to there, so they're the same amount up. At this point, I'll select that, and that. Shift and D, X, and then Shift and R, 2, 3. There we go. So what we're going to be using is an add-on called Mesh Copier, and this is perfect for this sort of workflow. In fact, it's kind of what this is designed for. And all we need to do is select a work surface that we've created, and importantly, let's go into edge mode, it needs to be bound by 4 edges. Basically, it should be, or is best to be, a rectangle or a square. And what we do is we just right click, and once this is installed, we get a mesh copier option there on our right click, and we set this as a source. Then we go into face mode and select as many of these faces as we want. I'm just going to select those two. Right click, mesh copier, and paste. And it replaces the face with the one that we selected, with that perfect geometry because we booleaned everything together so we don't have anything going through. I can then do this with my other edges on my other points. So let's select that, right click, mesh copier, and then set as source, face mode. Let's select that one. I mean, I've got lots of these to play with, so let's just right click, mesh copier, and then paste. And like, it's so easy. Look how insanely easy this is to do. I really like this one, so let's go into edge mode. I might put this on a couple of extra ones. So what I did here was just raise this up a little bit so it's at a bit more of an interesting angle. And again, mesh copier, and then set as source, face. We'll do one here. Let's have one here as well. Yeah, we'll just do two for now. Right click, mesh copier, and paste. Right, I think you've seen this enough now. You're getting the idea, so I'm just going to speed through this, adding in these other faces, and you can see what we end up with. Now, before we go on to the other one, I did want to quickly demonstrate that the faces do not need to be identical in size. If you remember, we have got this slight inset here, and I did say I'd mention this. Well, the reason that we had to do this slight inset here, so we get this face, is that if we didn't and we had this vertex, so you've got a vertex here on this panel, or this edge, sorry, that edge there, this wouldn't work. It needs a rectangle, 4 edges, or a square. Now do bear in mind that this works better when the objects you're copying from place to place are the same proportions, but they don't have to be. For example, we could take this, let's just shift select those, right click, mesh copier, and then set as source, and we could go to any face, so we could do one of these, and mesh copier, and paste, and it will rescale everything to work. Now in this instance, that's not very nice because it messes around with the bevel and the size of our keys, but in some instances that wouldn't be a problem. So don't think that your source needs to be exactly the same size as the place where it's pasted. So let's go into edge mode, and I'll just carry on with this process. Now I will mention as I'm going through this, there are other ways of doing this. You don't need this add-on. You could be copying and pasting these shapes manually, because they are pretty much exactly the same size, so that one that's slightly shrunk could be an annoyance. So you could do this yourself. I just think it's a very tedious process that this is going to vastly speed up. You could also theoretically do something like this with geometry nodes and create a geometry node setup that would do this for you and put them in place. But again, I think that's going to take longer to set up, but maybe it'd be faster in the long run if you were going to do this maybe like hundreds and hundreds of times. But I'm not planning on doing this hundreds and hundreds of times, so this doesn't become worth it for me. So you kind of need to balance those things out. But I really love this Mesh Copier add-on. I think it's a really great tool for processes like this, and meaning that you're just not going to have really boring looking objects. Now just to give a demonstration of how this works, so we're just going to select this, Shift and D, and make a copy of this. And then we're going to array this. So, in fact, do I want 2 copies of this? I'll just do this twice, just so that we can demonstrate everything. Now, in this instance, everything is still linked together. So what we'll do is go into any mode, press P, and separate by loose parts. So now we've got all of these separated, though we're going to have to bring this together again at some point as we do this. So let's come into this one. We're just going to add an array. There we go. We want this to be 0 on the X. We want this to be 1 on the Y, and we can set as many of these as we want. Let's go that far, and we want to merge this. Let's do one more. Let's do 10. Let's apply this, so apply, and then we can go into vertex mode, and we can see what we've done here. In fact, edge mode, and we're going to press F here. So the reason we didn't want to have this in place is so that we don't get internal faces here, which would be really annoying for 3D printing. If you're not doing this for 3D printing, this would be largely irrelevant to you, so you can do it however you want. And then we're just going to select these as well, and Control and J, and then we can go into face mode, In fact, actually, let's go into vertex mode. Any mode would be fine. I'm just going to bring this a little bit closer so it's easier to see, and then go into edge mode, and then once again I'm now using these outer edges. There's only going to be 4 of them. Right click, mesh copier, set as source, and then I could select multiples of these if I wanted to. Let's do, I mean, we've got 1, 2, 3, we've got 12. So literally we don't need to do any of them the same. So mesh copier and then paste. And we're just going to do that for each of these, so we've got a range of different units. Now, I did want to demonstrate this without me doing anything funky here, but I just want to mention as well, if you want to make this even faster, let's just go into edge mode, you could make this even quicker by right-clicking, mesh copy, right-click, and then assign this to a shortcut, or assign it to a quick favorite. And if you do that, this is going to be really, really rapid. So you can make this even faster should you want to. So with that done, we're left with our computer consoles. Now, this is looking pretty good, and we could easily leave this like this if we wanted to. But we can also create some more variations. So let's just do 2 copies of this. In fact, actually, this seems like an odd way to do it. Let's Shift and D and do one there, and then we'll do another one of those. And we'll just have a look at what we could change. Actually, let's just delete that last one, because what we are going to need to do is break this up. So we'll use hard ops for this, and I'm going to use a mesh tool called Dice. We want to go in this direction. Let's go there, and we want a lot of these to make this really smooth. In fact, I'm just going to press Y and type that in. Let's go for 360. Really, really smooth. Hit enter, and that has now been diced. Now, I've done a video recently on dicing. There's a link to that in the description as well if you want to have a go at that. Let's Shift and S and move our object origin to the center of our geometry, and at that point we'll make a duplicate. Now, the reason we're doing this is because we want to, well, flex this, make this look a bit more interesting. And that should be relatively easy to do. So let's just say we're going to do this for the middle. We'll do 2 either side that aren't flexed. So we're going to come in here, and I'm just going to Shift and Z and select all of those all the way up to that point. Yeah, that will do. And then we'll come here, and then we want 2 from the end this way, and then select those as well. And then we'll just select all of the ones in the middle. And we're going to use another add-on for this. If I right click, it is called Simple Bend, just here, and we're going to click Simple Bend, and that is going to allow us to flex this, so we can do something here, like having this. So we're going to do this, I'm going to hold down Shift so that it snaps. We want to snap that to 180, and then we've got that good to go. Q to confirm, and then we've got this really cool looking computer station. How good is that? Now, this does distort some of our objects slightly. Notice that it's been flexed, so these round objects now look a little bit different, but I don't think that's a problem in this instance, and I think you could either avoid that by not having round objects, or just accept that as part of the look, and I think this looks really cool. The other thing we could do with this, if we come to this object, which is a copy of it, and do exactly the same thing. In fact, will we do the same thing? Let's just select 3 at the top here. So I'm just going to go here to there, that's 2, and all the way to here. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. Oh, I should have done that in X-ray mode. That was very lazy of me. Let's make sure we've got that selected correctly. So there, and then we're going to do exactly the same thing. Right click and Simple Bend. And this time I'm just going to go there. No, let's do here. And I'm going to Shift, change that to 90. Let go. And then I'm going to press C to change the fix point. And we've got that. So we've got something where we can move around the side. So there we go. So with that done, we've got a few computer workstations. We can do that again really quickly and easily because we've got everything set up. And now I've just got infinite different bits of scenery that I could do with this if I need to. And it didn't take particularly long to set up. And that's what's great about this. And now that it is set up, I can just do even more with it. So hopefully that's been an interesting look at a slightly different workflow than what I normally cover. I think it gives a lot of options, and I'm sure there's a load of use cases where this is going to be great and make life a lot faster for when you want to create a big range of different scenery types, creating a few different sort of shapes and objects, nesting them into one another to create a really wide range of different surfaces, and then bring them together into some sort of fun overall project. If you found that useful, please hit that like button. It helps to get the video shared around, which is always really appreciated. Do comment if you've got any good uses for this, give people some ideas and some things to play around with, and if you want any of these desks, they are available on the Patreon as well, and that's in the 3D design file tier. Have a great day, guys.